too far in certain scenarios. So it's a rare. Hello guys, welcome back to ESENtaxa. Andrea Papito here. In this video, we are going to discuss about the difference between the tax law and the tax clarifications. If you're new to this channel, ESENtaxa talks about how to optimize your taxation if you want to relocate in a specific country. We reduce your taxes, we found a way to planify your journey in a specific country and optimize your taxes as much as possible. We specialize in Italy. We are the #1 channel that in English explains in details all the Italian tax system, but we also cover jurisdictions such as Belgium, Albania and Portugal. Now, in this specific video, I want to discuss something which is extremely important, and this is a particular feature of the Italian tax system. You might not find the same thing in other countries, or the other countries, other jurisdictions might have a similar concept. Here, I'm going to explain you the difference between the tax laws versus tax clarification. So, the tax laws are basically all the rules, regulation that are published by the government. So whenever we have a budget law, for Italy, for example, we have the Italian budget law normally published and released and approved at the end of the tax year, normally between October and December, which explains, which is written, which overrides the existing law because they have to update the budget law because the balance of that country for a year is different from the previous year. So they need to apply and write different rules and regulation. And those are published to the official gazette of that Italy, of that specific country, okay? And everybody is supposed to be stick to the law. It's something that is written in the stone, and it's a precise instructions, precise behavior that we citizen or we taxpayer, we have to follow, okay? So the tax law are official laws published in the gazette. And basically all the lawyers and all the fiscal consultant, everybody basically should stick to these laws. And they have the highest priority, okay? What about the tax clarifications? The tax clarification comes when the Italian tax agency, which is the entity that releases this kind of rules and regulation, they comes when the tax laws don't cover all the scenarios, or they don't precisely describe technically how to behave in a certain scenario. So the tax clarifications come from the tax agency, while this one comes from the parliament. Okay, so the parliament gives the official law, while the tax clarification are coming from the tax agency. Now, what is the difference and why you have to know very well this this discrimination, and why certain accountants are willing to follow only the law and they try to ignore the tax clarification. Here in ESENtaxa, whenever we talk about specific tax regime, specific tax law, a tax benefit that allow you to save a lot of taxes, we always recommend to follow the tax law and the tax clarification. For the impatriate regime in particular, we have provided in the description below the video, you will have the link to our online course for the impatriate regime eligibility test, in which we guide you through all the tax clarification and not just only the tax law. So you will have an eligibility test, you know exactly if you're eligible or not for the impatriate regime, because we follow the tax law and the tax clarification. Why the tax clarification for us are extremely important? Because even though a lot of accountants and lawyers, they think they don't have the same power of the tax law, but they are extremely important because when it comes to tax audit, the Italian tax agency follow the tax clarifications. So, because since they want to behave in a certain way, in a certain technical way, of course they're going to ask you what they think it's right, okay? I can give you an example, let's be a little bit practical, let's give you an example. So, we have talked in this channel about detrazione. The detrazione is a way to reduce your taxes. Or even better, let's talk about the tax credit, okay? The tax credit is the famous amount of tax that you have to pay in a different country, and while you're living in Italy, for example. So you're perceiving an income, your global income, your worldwide income, and it's part of this worldwide income is coming from abroad. But abroad, you have been already subject to a certain taxation from the country you originate your income, And then you are basically, thanks to the convention to avoid the double taxation, you can benefit from a tax credit. And the tax credit is something that is written in the law. So you benefit from the tax credit because the law explicitly says that you have to subtract what have you already paid abroad versus the taxes, against the taxes that Italy wants you to ask you on worldwide. But the tax clarifications, they say it's fine that you subtract the tax credit, but we want to know if those tax credits are valid, are real. So they ask you the documentation. The tax clarifications ask you the documents to allow you to prove them that this tax credit, it's fine, okay? And the documentation might be payslips, if you're, for example, you have perceived an employee income, or if you receive a rental income, they want to know if you really have a property abroad, or the contract that you have stipulated abroad. And at the end, the tax clarification might also ask you to translate all this document in Italian, because simply subtracting the tax credit on the Italian tax file return is not enough. This is what the law says, but the tax clarification adds the behavior, the technical things that you have to, operative, what you have to do, what you have to archive, what kind of documents you need to preserve for a certain amount of time. In case of Italy, it's 5 years, in order to see your tax credit valid in case of audit or in case of checks. Okay, so the tax clarification allows you to go in details from operative point of view, and sometimes the tax clarification also describes some scenarios which are not previewed in the law. Sometimes the tax agency also goes too far in certain scenarios. So it's a rare, but they clarify too much, they add too much details that sometimes they goes in contrast with the original law. And that's the reason why a lot of accountants in Italy, sometimes they don't really respect all the tax clarification. Can be also the case of the impatriate regime. For the impatriate regime, for example, some tax clarification ask you to stay 24 consecutive months, but some accountant, they might say, no, the law never mentioned 24 consecutive months. This is just the idea and the opinion of the Italian tax agency to prove that you really gain experience abroad. Okay, fine. If you follow your accountant, if your accountant is confident enough to not respect your tax clarification, what will happen is that when you receive an audit, a check, and you don't provide the proof of 24 consecutive months because your accountant told you to do so, just ignore this tax clarification because the law is more important than tax clarification from the Italian system, jurisdiction system. You don't give back to the Italian tax agency this proof, and the Italian tax agency asks you to return back all the money because they think that the impatriate regime has been not respected. And then your accountant has to follow you in court because you have to act with a specific procedure, which is in Italian called impugnare. It means that I take my case against the court, against the judge. I'm going to start a controversy against the Italian tax agency to prove them that I am in the right position. I don't have to prove you 24 consecutive months because the law doesn't mention this detail. Now, the problem of being in court is that you have to pay your accountant extra for this service. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you also have to hope that you win the case. Not always you also find the way, you might also find some judge that they are more in favor to tax clarification. You might lose the case, so you have to give back all the money, all the fine interest, plus the legal expenses. So when you want to start a procedure in court, a fiscal court in Italy, you have to be very careful, and you have to think really is it worth it or not. Okay. Here in ESENtaxa, we always suggest to follow the tax clarifications, even though sometimes they restrict too much certain tax benefit, but then you're safe in case of audit, and you don't even have to think about a possible controversy in the Italian fiscal court, because if you respect all the tax clarification, by default, you fulfill all the requirements of the law and of the Italian tax agency, and then you're fine. Whenever you talk to your accountant in Italy, make sure that your accountant also is willing to follow you in case of controversy with the Italian tax agency. That's the reason why sometimes you might find different opinions in Italy from different accountants, simply because some accountants, they are stick to the law and don't really care about the tax agency. Other accountants instead, they are stick from both tax clarification and tax and of course tax law. And here in ESENtaxa, we are in favor of following both regulation, both type of tax laws, okay? Why? I'm going to finish this video just to explain you why there is this difference. Some accountants, especially that kind of accountant that are also lawyers, they have studied law, the Italian law. They say that when you go to court, you are a party of a controversy, and the Italian tax agency is the other part of the controversy. So in theory, you should be equal with your party you're having the controversy with. Okay, and the judge should be fair with both parties. But keep in mind that the Italian tax agency is always stronger than you. Even though it should not be that it should not be like that, but unfortunately, you always have to consider that you against an entity which represents the state, and they are always willing to withdraw money from the taxpayers. If you don't want to have issue in future with the Italian tax agency, if you do not want to hope to win a case, it's always better to follow an accountant that follows the tax clarifications. I know that the tax clarification sometimes might restrict too much certain tax benefit. For the case of unwanted regime, the Italian tax agency puts a lot of boundaries, while the tax law at the beginning is just more open, free, and more clear to read. It's up to you, of course, but here in ESENtaxa, we always suggest the most easy way to live in a certain country, pay less tax possible legally, without any problem at the end of the tax years or at the end of the possible 5 years, which is the span of time that the tax agency can check you back. Okay? So I hope this video clarifies why we always talk about tax certification versus tax laws or tax regulation. If you want to be eligible, if you want to check if you want to be eligible for the unwanted regime, we have released a new online course. Find the link in the description below this video. But if you want to move to Italy and you want to know more about all the Italian tax system and fiscal system, we also have released an online course that is like 4 hours in which we explain you everything. Any kind of things from real estate to tax regime for pensioner, unwanted regime as well, and how to invest in Italy and pay less tax possible. Also running a business, and etc, etc, etc. For anything else, and if you like this kind of content, subscribe this channel, notification bell, and like button to be always updated whenever we release this kind of content. Thank you, see you to the next time.